Hey guys, so today we're going to be getting into something, we're going to slow down a little bit. We're going to be getting into a conversation about a refund or cancellation policy type thing with Airbnb. So of course, Airbnb, there are several different cancellation policies that you can have for any one of your listings. Flexible, strict, super strict, all sorts of different policies, right? So we had a situation recently where a guest had booked a 5-night stay, and then in essence they checked in, and within a few minutes they said, you know what, I don't like this place, there was something going on, and they said, nope, I don't want to stay here anymore. And then they said they wanted a full refund, and we said, well, unfortunately our cancellation policy, this was a very busy weekend, for like a long weekend. And we said, you know what, I recommend you call Airbnb, right? So in this video, we're gonna be getting into the details of that, and just how that process goes when you need to get Airbnb involved in the resolution center a little bit, and some different options and different things that can actually happen. And really what we're gonna be getting into is all of that, and then persistence. So we've had, every host, will agree with this. You have situations where sometimes maybe a guest damages something, and they don't admit to it. They don't want to actually pay for it, right? So then you need to get the resolution center involved. So that's it's a bit of a process, but you can absolutely do it. And so this story is about, going through a little bit of that, but then persisting when, the right thing was not being done, by Airbnb. And so I think there's definitely a little bit of red tape and, bureaucracy and people doing what they're told, and what, Airbnb employees doing what they're instructed to do, but it's just not quite matching up with reality, with what actually is going on. So we're going to talk about why this story matters to hosts, talk about the booking situation, what went wrong, all the details of it, and then Airbnb's initial position, our immediate reaction, the case that we made with Airbnb, how we dealt with it with Airbnb, because this was not a simple 1 hour thing, or even a 1-day thing, and then a couple of the turning points, what really changed in this conversation with Airbnb, series of conversations with Airbnb, and then some of the key lessons that we learned, as well as the final tips for hosts to walk away from. So again, like I said, so this was someone who made a reservation, a couple weeks in advance, for a busy weekend, and it was a 5-night stay. They checked in, and there's something, that they just didn't like about the apartment. Beautiful. And I will say, this particular complaint we have never once received from any other guest that we've ever had. So this was about like a kind of like a health, like an allergy, like a dust in the air kind of thing, right? And so in this same building, it's important to note we have three total apartments in this building. And so we've hosted hundreds of people in this building across the 3 apartments, and we've never once had someone complain about this kind of dust in the air, and it was so atrocious, and so we've never had that happen, right? And so this woman checks in, and she stays there for 10 minutes, and she said, no, I need a refund, I need a full refund right away. Well, very sorry, I would suggest you contact Airbnb. I actually did speak to her on the phone, and I said, I recommend you contact Airbnb about this. So all of this was happening at like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. when I spoke to her on the phone. Well, I go to sleep a little bit later, and then at like 12:50 in the morning, I get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and I see a message on my phone from Airbnb, and I could not believe what I was seeing. Airbnb had canceled the reservation, like administratively canceled the reservation, and then they refunded the guest her entire stay. So I was out, like the payout not what she paid, but the payout, I was out like $850. Not a small amount. Even if it was $50, I still would have made the same fight, but it was just infuriating, right? And so we've never had this happen before. So this was an administrative cancellation because Airbnb said, oh, there was something about her complaint that, clicked a, certain ticker, it, rang a certain alarm in Airbnb's end and their customer service end, and bam, and they sent us a message saying, hey, you have 30 minutes to respond to us. Like, we, as the host, had 30 minutes to respond to Airbnb's customer service message on the platform. They sent a message at 12:18 in the morning. Coincidentally, I saw it at like 12:55 in the morning. They said you have 30 minutes to respond to this message. Like, what? I've never even heard that rule ever. No matter what time of day, I've never heard that rule. So now, regarding a refund or cancellation, where we're potentially losing $850, now I have 30 minutes to respond. So this is why it's so important, and this is part of the conversation that I have with Airbnb is how could you possibly give a host, especially in the middle of the night like that? What if it was 3 in the morning? What if it was 5 in the morning? I just couldn't understand it. And so that was a big part of our argument, with Airbnb. But also, there was no documentation. I was asking Airbnb, there's no documentation that of dust in the air. Airbnb's response, and this is over the course of a couple of days, Airbnb's response was, well, you need to send us pictures to prove that the property is clean. I'm like, what? This sounds like guilty until proven innocent. Doesn't sound good to me, right? And so I said, you know what? Fine. If you're looking for pictures, I can send you pictures. Fine. Go into our Slack channel, find the exact pictures from that day that it was cleaned, which coincidentally was the same day it was cleaned that this woman was checking in. So it was cleaned just hours before, 8 hours before, in the middle of the day. Upload all those pictures. The floors are still wet from being mopped and everything. And so submit these pictures. Okay, let's get to the next level. And then eventually I had, going in this circle with Airbnb, and I still wasn't getting anywhere. And I said, you know what? How about this? I need a supervisor to call me. This was the big turning point in this conversation. I need a supervisor to call me within 30 minutes. This was a very, kind of a bold thing, and I needed to, walk the line a little, right on the fence of like, I need answers. I need to speak to a supervisor, but you also can't be too rude in your messaging because at the end of the day, you're still trying to get your money back. So, but I was very bold in my messaging. Like, this is, completely unreasonable. Think of it like a court case. You can even use some kind of legal jargon a little bit, even words as unreasonable, right? To kind of stand out a little bit. So this is completely unreasonable. I am a host with X thousands of stays and reviews. This has never once happened in this building ever. Look at the message history. This guest, did not provide any documentation, anything, right? And so I had sent a message, hey, I need to speak with a supervisor within 30 minutes. Because if that's the rule that you're going to impose on me and all other hosts in the world, then you know what? I'm going to hold you to that same standard. I need a phone call from a supervisor within 30 minutes. Otherwise, and I left it at that. I didn't give a threat or something, but that was it, right? And so I can tell you, within 90 seconds, I received a phone call. I got a phone call 90 seconds later. It was not a supervisor, but it was a regular customer service rep saying, hey, saw your message, we're working on it, right? So they wanted to at least acknowledge it. Okay, I appreciate it. I appreciate that. Thank you. So a supervisor did call me about 20 minutes later. Like, okay, fine. So why this is so important is, which is why one of the things I talked to them about on the phone with the supervisor is, this is not only me that this is happening to. There are, millions of hosts in the world, right? So I think there's about 4 million hosts in the world. I cannot possibly be the only host in the world that is being singled out by Airbnb for this type of thing. You have 30 minutes to respond. That's crazy. In the middle of the night, that's crazy. And then bam, taking your money, right? Like with no documentation from the guest, nothing to prove, right? And so there was a whole conversation there with the supervisor. But at the end of the day, this is important, not just for us getting our money back, but representing every host in the world that is potentially going through the same thing. And so the big lesson here is persistence. You need to be persistent with Airbnb. You need to understand the rules. You know, that's your responsibility as a host. You need to understand the rules, what you can and can't do, and also be, you know, like you need to stand up for yourself. You need to be polite. You need to be professional above all else. But it is okay to be direct, you know, with Airbnb. They're doing a job, we're doing a job. And this is a very simple, you know, straightforward conversation that I have with the supervisor as well. But I will tell you, within the first 20 seconds of that phone call with the supervisor, she told me, hey, I just want to let you know right away, we are giving you your money back. That was pretty much the first thing she said. We are giving you your full payout, the $850 some. And I said, okay, great, excellent. Thank you so much. Very professional both ways, but it was clear. And then we went into like, okay, why is this how did this happen? Representing other hosts, that kind of thing. You know, really getting to the bottom of it. But the first thing she said was, you're getting your money back. My question is, how did this happen, right? How did it get to this? So there must have been, just like you, everyone in your business, you have different things happen where, you know, if X, then Y. You have SOPs for your business. So everyone does, or you should. So with an SOP, so clearly something happened within Airbnb where the guest said the right words, whether they knew it or not. The guest said, hey, I'm dealing with this certain thing. And then bam, that triggered an alarm with Airbnb's customer service. And they said, okay, automatic cancellation, administrative cancellation. And then that triggered the cancellation, right? And so at that point, once that cancellation was triggered and hey, you have 30 minutes, all these things, seems like a bunch of nonsense to me. And eventually speaking to the right person, standing up for ourselves, speaking to the right person, we finally figured out that truth, right? So there's something going on their end that was not quite perfect, and that's okay, things happen, but you need to be prepared to get into it, right? So Airbnb, they were initially really sticking to their guns in these first couple days of messaging back and forth with them. Nope, we said you needed documentation. Sorry, that's the best we can do. I know this isn't the outcome you're looking for. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. So again, being persistent, that was a very frustrating thing to deal with, but being persistent, you know, respectfully demanding to speak with a supervisor, right? And so that worked. So you have to treat it like a court case. Every resolution center claim, whether it's a stained bed sheet or a stained carpet or a guest broke a wine glass or whatever it is, or in this case, you know, getting out of their 5-night stay because of some personal issue that they were having. Sorry, that doesn't meet the criteria for a refund. So you have to be prepared to make your case to Airbnb. If we didn't have our SOP set up, where we receive pictures from our cleaner for every single after every single cleaning, I wouldn't have had those pictures to present as like part of my evidence, right? And so you have to be prepared for all these different situations. We've never had this exact situation before, but it was we handled it in a similar way to another resolution center claim. So escalation strategy, just obviously escalating to the supervisor, getting to the next level. And so some key takeaways here for everybody, and things to, actionable things that you can do to move forward. Make sure you have your SOPs for your company dialed in. They need to be organized, they need to be written, they need to be accessible for all of your team members. So that way the correct person, let's say it's a virtual assistant or an operations manager, that each individual employee needs to know, they need to know their SOPs, they need to know where they can find them, readily available, and then you need to reevaluate things as well. So even this experience has led us to reevaluate our own SOPs. edit things, improve things, everyone learns, everyone gets better. You know, this is the first time we've had this kind of a wild situation. Hopefully it doesn't happen again, but you know what? I'm sure there will be something different in the future. So, you know, keep communicating with Airbnb. You know, you want to be professional, you want to be respectful, because at the end of the day, you wouldn't be able to make this money on their platform. If you upset them, they could ban you at any moment, you know, if they really wanted to. If you violate their terms and policies and all that stuff. So you need to be respectful, you need to be professional. But that's my biggest thing, is have your SOPs dialed in, and have all of your team members cross-trained, especially if you have an operations manager. They're going to be the ones to really handle this with your virtual assistants and everything. Or if that is you, if you're wearing, you know, 5 different hats, then you need to be ready to do all of these things. So that's it for today. You know, I really wanted to get into that because this was just such a unique situation and we've never had it happen before. So I hope you guys all learned something. If anything, get started on your SOPs. All right, thanks.